Today I start an elimination diet. Now the purpose of an elimination diet is to determine which foods you're either intolerant, sensitive, or allergic to. The research right now shows that about 20% of the population at least suffer from some form of food intolerance. Now it's likely a lot higher than that if you include minor sensitivities and allergic reactions. There's a few different ways you can determine which foods you have problems with. Typically if you go to a doctor, they'll give you a skin test or a blood test. The problem is they're not very reliable. So the gold standard for determining which foods you have problems with is an elimination diet. So that's what we're going to talk about in this video, as well as a few other videos throughout my journey of doing this diet. Now there's a lot of symptoms that can come on from specific food intolerances, and a lot of times it can be very confusing to know if it's coming from food or something else that's going on in your life. The most common symptoms are gut related. So it's going to be bloating or stomach pain. These are things you'll notice right away. You may have diarrhea, constipation, or other bowel issues. You also may have some skin issues. So you could have rashes and hives and other things like that. What a lot of people don't realize is that there's many other symptoms too that you wouldn't typically attribute to your food. So this could be aches and pains in your joints, because what happens is when you have a minor sensitivity or intolerance or anything else, what it does is it creates an inflammatory response in the body. Now inflammation can cause problems with the joints, as I mentioned. It also can affect you cognitively. So it can affect your energy levels and result in fatigue, brain fog, cognitive decline. It can impede your sleep and impede you getting into deeper sleep. Now even if you don't have any specific symptoms, myself, I don't really have any symptoms that would typically force me to do an elimination diet. However, I'm looking to optimize. If there is some levels of inflammation in my body, then I want to know. I want to know what it is that's causing it. So that's my purpose of doing the elimination diet. Now, here's how to do an elimination diet. The first thing you want to do is remove all of the most common food allergy type categories from your diet. You do this for about 3 weeks. Now the reason you remove it for 3 weeks is that it takes 21 days for the antibodies to those foods to get removed. So you want to get rid of that first, and then what you do is you slowly introduce each category one at a time into your diet and see how you feel. We'll talk more about that after. Now you'll notice that there is so many different types of elimination diets out there. If you Google elimination diet right now, you'll see probably 100 different versions of it. And really what it comes down to is that the best form of elimination diet is the most restrictive. Okay? So the more foods that you take out, the better you can determine how you react to more food categories. So let's look at some of the food categories, and ultimately it's up to you and what you want to remove, but the more the better. So the typical foods that you'll remove are gluten and soy, dairy and eggs, nightshades, so tomatoes, eggplants, white potatoes, bell peppers, citrus fruits like oranges, nuts and most seeds, legumes, sugar and sweeteners. You want to get rid of shellfish, but some fish you can still eat like salmon and sardines. Processed foods, so vegetable oils, anything that's processed that has any additives in it, get rid of it. Meat is somewhat of a controversial subject in elimination diets. The reason for this is that if you eat conventionally farmed meats, they often eat a lot of grains that contain gluten or soy. They can eat sugar and a bunch of other crap. So this is going to translate into the foods that you eat. So if that's the type of meats that you typically eat, then you want to get rid of those. Those cannot be in the diet. However, if you eat 100% grass-fed, organic, pasture-raised meats, then those are okay to include in your elimination diet. Unless you suspect that you have any issues with them, then take them out, but if not, then you're okay to eat those. Now the final thing you want to remove is alcohol and caffeine. I know this one sucks, but that's the way it goes. Now, what foods can you eat is the big question, okay? And there's actually quite a bit. So I have a few of them here. The important thing to note is that, as I said, you want it to be clean. So if you can, you should eat organic with all your fruits and vegetables, and especially with your meats. They should all be organic, humanely raised type meats. Wild fish if you're going to be eating it. So I went to the farmer's market today and spent a bunch of money on a bunch of different foods. So you can eat basically all the vegetables except for your nightshades. So I've got a lot of cruciferous vegetables, so some kale, some spinach, cauliflower, carrots. I've also got squash, so spaghetti squash, normal squash. Fruits are okay, so I've got some apples and some pears. Berries are really good as well. I have some frozen ones in the freezer. Sweet potatoes, so you can't have white potatoes, but sweet potatoes are fine to eat and are a great, source of nutrients. Some important foods for elimination diet, because it does restrict quite a bit, is your fats. You want to get some healthy fats, and so avocado is a good one, as well as coconut. So different coconut products can be very useful in any diet, but I've got coconut milk. You can also get coconut flakes. You can use coconut butter, which is really good as well. Another important thing is going to be your oils. So oils we're going to have to use for cooking, to put on your salads, for salad dressing, and really you can put it on anything you want. But I've got avocado oil, I've got olive oil, which are cold pressed and organic, and then I also have coconut oil in the cupboard up there. Spices are good to go. Spices and herbs, you want to get as many of those as possible. Garlic, onion, and then meats. So I've got some ground lamb, and I also have some ground beef that are 100% grass-fed that I got from the market as well. So these foods are what you're going to eat for 3 weeks. I'm going to have a bunch of recipes coming up and show you kind of how I feel and the foods that I'm commonly eating throughout the other videos along my journey of completing this elimination diet. When you bring foods back in, the way you want to do it is you add in a new category of food 3 days at a time. Okay? So the reason for this is that when you add a new category, you want to feel and understand your body and see how you react to the food. So it may react right away within 5 minutes, it may be a couple hours, and it may be 12 hours to 24 hours. So the first day that you reintroduce food, you want to eat it multiple times throughout that day and then see how you feel over the next couple days. Okay? If you feel a reaction, you want to remove it and no longer eat it. If you don't feel a reaction, continue eating it, and then after the third day, bring in the next one. And you'll just continue doing this until you have all the foods that you want back in your diet. When you're reintroducing foods back into your diet, you're going to want to track this as accurate as possible. You really want to know how you feel. So the best way to do this is a food journal. So write down the foods that you're eating, the times that you're eating that, and then how you feel throughout that. Okay? How you sleep, how your energy levels are, absolutely everything you can document it. The more the better. Another thing you can do for a good objective measure is a pulse test. So check your heart rate before you eat the food, and then once you've eaten the food, check it again, and if it's 10 beats more or 10 beats less, you know there's some form of reaction from the food. So before you get started with elimination diet, there's a few things that you want to do to prepare properly, okay? If you're someone that typically eats a lot of sugar or a high carb diet or lots of processed foods, this may be a little bit difficult to just jump into cold turkey. So you're going to want to start to wean yourself off those type of foods and start eating more cleaner sources of foods beforehand. Otherwise you're going to have a lot of food cravings, can affect you mentally, and just make this a very difficult process. The other thing you're going to want to do is wean yourself off coffee and alcohol, if it's something you drink a lot, before you do this. Caffeine can create withdrawal symptoms, and you don't want to have that through the middle of this. So if you can, start to wean yourself off coffee before you start the elimination diet, as well as alcohol. A lot of people, when they start new diets, they like to go out with a bang. So they order a big pizza, eat a bunch of chips, and whatever crappy food they can find just the day before they start the elimination diet. This is going to make the first few days really, really difficult for you. So I highly advise not doing that and practicing and starting to get in the hang of eating cleaner foods. And finally, you really want to prepare before you do this. Okay, so you want to look up recipes, have them prepared ahead of time. Know what you're going to cook, know the foods that you need to buy at the grocery store. Really put some time and effort into this, because if you don't do it and all of a sudden you have a bunch of food that you've never ate before and you have no idea how to cook it, it's going to create a lot of stress and you're going to end up reaching for that chocolate bar or some other type of food. So make sure to prepare and slowly wean yourself off the crappier food before you get into this. And then from there, it's only 3 weeks. Keep an eye on our videos over the next few weeks. They're going to come out every Tuesday, where I'm going to document how I feel throughout this, as well as what recipes I'm using, some tips to do this properly, as well as when I get to the reintroduction part, I'll make sure to document that and have videos for that as well, so you can see how to track and do this and figure out which foods you are intolerant or sensitive to. So don't forget to subscribe to this video and check back in to see when the new videos come out. Thanks, guys.